Are you a Muslim?
Yes, I'm a Muslim, yeah. Can you just like summarize your argument?
Yeah, sure. The Kaaba is considered by Islam or in Islamic sources and Islamic belief as the central place of worship. Abraham built this, invited mankind, mankind came. So this is the central place of worship for humanity, the special place of Allah in the mother of cities, as the Quran says. But we cannot verify the historicity of Mecca. We cannot verify the historicity of the Kaaba. The Kaaba has nothing to do with Abrahamic
Hold
religion
on.
as far as we can see it,
I'm
and so
gonna,
on.
because we can't verify, that's evidence.
If a very big claim is made and there is no evidence to it when there should be, then that puts the
I don't
claim
think
in doubt.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's how it works. I mean, I'm sure Derek knows. Derek, you're a Christian, right?
No. I'm
There are
an
many
atheist.
other religions or theories that say something. Just because we haven't found evidence yet, it doesn't mean there is no evidence. There might be evidence that was washed away in history.
Why do you
Sure.
have any reason to believe in the narrative if there is no evidence?
Well, I don't
To-
believe in Islam and the Quran based on what it says about the Kaaba. I have different reasons to believe why Islam is true, and based on that, I believe what the Islam says.
So you have to accept the narrative about the Kaaba based on a presupposition, which is that Islam is true based on other things, which is why that certain claim must also be true. Where do you exactly stop with that? How can we come to the conclusion that something that Islam says is wrong if you just accept everything as true?
There are arguments to why Islam is true, and then once you establish that, you can conclude everything that Islam says is true.
What you're saying is that you have reason to believe that Islam is definitely true,
Yes.
which is why you will accept the Islamic narrative about the Kaaba as true as well, even if we do not have any evidence, and even if the evidence seems to suggest the contrary of the Islamic claim.
What do you mean the evidence seems to suggest the contrary? What does that mean?
Evidential arguments. Mecca does not appear in history. The Kaaba does not appear in any source until after the emergence of Islam. Abrahamic religion is entirely disconnected. The Kaaba has no reference to it when it should have references to it.
There might be various possibilities. As you know, humans, we're not perfect in our research, in our archaeological studies. It could be the possibility that we haven't yet found archaeological evidence.
Here is the issue. This is not simply a lack of evidence. This is not simply a lack of knowledge and information. The Islamic scripture makes a claim that Abraham was instructed to proclaim to humanity to come to the Kaaba. And according to the Islamic tradition, humanity came to the Kaaba from every distant pass. The Quran treats the prophets and the Jewish history, the biblical history, as facts. The Quran references the prophets of the Israelites the entire time and informs us about the idea that those prophets were indeed legitimate people on a mission from Allah to spread truth to humanity. By that, we would conclude that if the Kaaba was indeed the central place of worship, if Abraham did indeed spread this message to all humanity, at least the Jews, at least the Hebrews, the Israelites, would have some connection to this based on Islam's idea that the prophets were sent by Allah, that the books were sent by him. They don't have any connection to it. We have no history, no reference to the Kaaba and to Mecca at all.
The claim is Abraham spread monotheism. It didn't necessarily spread Islam in the sense that it is after Prophet Muhammad with its specific teachings.
Okay, your belief is that humanity went astray. Humanity was given a task to believe in Allah, to worship him. The Quran explicitly speaks of the practices which Abraham proclaimed to mankind when he invited them. No
But just
significance
because
at
we
all.
haven't found any evidence yet, it's not a positive argument against the Quranic claims. It's just not.
It would be like believing that in Germany 2,000 years ago, there was a giant place that everyone came to worship, but now nobody knows about this at all.
That could be the case. That could be the case.
That could not be the case. It is
No,
impossible
it's
to
not.
believe
It's not
by
logically
archaeological
impossible.
standards.
Is it logically impossible?
I don't care about the logical aspect of it. By the basic fundamental standards of anthropology, oral
Does
traditions, and so on that we have,
basic anthropology say that you've disproved Islam's claim? Is that what they've said?
that's not what I said. Such a thing would be considered unbelievable, highly doubted, if it could not be verified by very basic anthropological, archaeological standards. We don't have any single source from the world.
No one said that it has to be in the Hebrew sources for the Islam's claim to be true.
Could you believe that anything that Islam says, any claim that Islam makes, could be wrong?
No.
There we have it. Okay.
What does that mean?
Could any claim from the Quran be wrong?
To me, no. So what?
Right.
Why is he
Yeah, but
laughing?
why are we
What is-
discussing?
That is a presupposition.
If there is a clear contradiction, you can show me this contradicts this, and we can talk about it.
If we did find out that Muhammad makes certain prophecies which are clearly disproven, would you accept Muhammad's prophecies as false, or would you simply dismiss this?
I would re-examine. I would see there must be something wrong. Yeah, that might be a good case for you to make if you have that, but you haven't done that. Sure.
Muhammad made a prophecy saying that when some people came to him and asked him, when is the last hour, he turned toward a young boy who was in his presence and said explicitly in these words, do you see this young boy? If he lives, before he grows very old, the last hour will come to you. That in the context, this clearly means that the last hour, the day of judgment.
Are you a scholar of Islamic interpretation and hadith to say what the context is?
So you want to reinterpret the very explicit words?
It's not about reinterpreting. It's about when I look at the hadith and the Quran. Don't laugh because you're not making a point right now. When you look at the hadith and the Quranic, narrative, you have to consult the scholars and the academics, not a guy on YouTube.
I won't consult the scholars. I will look at the clear words.
Of course, you want to
look at what they say.
What you're doing.
If the word clearly says something that is wrong, I will not go to scholars who are biased and say, "Hey, can you please tell me why this is not true? Please give me a
When
reinterpretation."
you study the Quran and hadith, you don't just a guy on YouTube.
So what?
This is what the verse means. This is what the hadith means. No, it doesn't work that way.
They clearly say something that is false. But coming back to the whole Kaaba issue.
You got your food.
So,
Now you're changing the subject. Go ahead.
So what we have is that the Quran makes a very huge claim about
And you can't disprove that claim.
about the Kaaba and the world, a claim that seems ridiculous by any proper standard. We would expect
How
by
is it
the claim,
ridiculous?
we would explain,
You haven't proven that's ridiculous.
we would explain by the implications of this claim that the Quran makes that we would find some trace in the world about this thing called the Kaaba, but we don't find
That's
any
not-
reference to it.
We have other reasons and arguments to conclude that Islam is most likely the truth, and through that we conclude whatever Islam says about something is true.
You have just explained to us that you would never accept something about Islam as wrong because you would just either reinterpret it or dismiss it because you have other reasons to believe in it.
No,
or you
that's
would simply go to a
that's a different story. You're making a claim about a hadith without context, without scholarly interpretation, without
You will
without
say the
that.
same thing about everything that I bring up.
Well,
You guys
you
disagree.
can't just make a claim about quantum physics and you don't know anything about it, or you're not a scientist in quantum physics.
Okay, I think we're done.
Well, I thank you, Truth. And
Thank you.
look,
You got
man,
it.
we can do this again in the future if AP comes back. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, peace.
All right, peace. I personally, I get where you're coming from. Okay. Is it possible? It reminds me of that Jim Carrey scene on Dumb and Dumber where he's like, is there a chance? And she's like 1 in a million. And he's like, so you're telling me there's a chance? And is it possible? Sure. Anything's possible. But what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And there's no reason to accept it without that evidence.
You even have a more universally accepted method, which is Occam's razor, which is that you would never or not go for a certain conclusion which requires the larger amount of assumptions. And in this case, we would have to assume that this general universal place of worship which Abraham invited the world to was forgotten by everybody who came there, was forgotten by mankind, that all scriptures, that all evidence to it, that all texts referring to it were lost, that the Hebrew people completely, despite their divisiveness, got rid of this reference for some weird reason, that they also entirely collectively forgot about this for some reason, and so on. I tried to do something during the discussion. I tried to refer to a universal center of worship in Germany, for example, which is at the heart of Europe. Going by his logic, you could argue that there was once a universal center of worship just 2,000 years ago that people from all around the world came to. You could say, well, you can't dismiss that because we don't have any evidence that this was not the case. But yeah, okay, we don't have any evidence that this was not the case. And you could always wait for evidence for anything in the world. But hey, we have very serious reasons to conclude that there probably was no such place. Evidence does not mean you have to bring some concrete proof, some written document which says there was no such place in Germany. No, evidence can be the absence of something in such a case, which we then can use to conclude that a certain claim which Islam makes, for example, is most likely wrong.